Hi, Betty. I'm going to,
Hello.
I'm recording, I'm texting my assistant to tell her we can't get on Facebook.
Okay.
So, thank you, Betty, for joining us tonight. It only took us 15 minutes and we never did
That's
get
all
on
right.
live, but that's technology. So, but I'm glad you're here to share with us tonight. So I want to introduce you. Betty loves the outdoors. She loves to hike. She lives in Missouri. She's a physical therapist. And what stands out the most to me about Betty is she has a real servant heart. I've seen her over and over reach out to people in real caring ways. So welcome, Betty.
Thanks. It's really good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to finally get on. Well, you've been part of Rebuild, but first just give us a snapshot. What was your life like before you joined the Rebuild coaching group?
Okay. At the time that I joined Rebuild, I was 18 months post-divorce, and I had outwardly I was doing pretty well. I had changed jobs. I had moved to a different part of the country. I had arranged to be able to spend more time with my children and my grandchildren. I was in my own apartment with my dog. I had a full-time job, and I had close Christian friends who had experienced a lot of the same things I had. So I had people I could talk to that I didn't have to over-explain, people who would get it. But inwardly, there was a dense numbness. And sometimes I just didn't have any thoughts. I mean, my emotions were gone, but there were also, my emotions had been contained into a really small space where not only were they not very intense, they really weren't very broad. Like the number of emotions I experienced were really narrow. I mean, so much so that at work, I had asked somebody else to let me know if I was missing cues.
Because social cues,
because somebody would be totally frustrated and overwhelmed, and I would be the one who could do something about that, but wouldn't even notice that it was happening. That would be a coworker who needed my help, and I would not step in to help because I didn't observe it. And that made me worried and panicky because I felt like I was becoming less and less of a real person, just a functioner.
So you didn't really have
I didn't allow any negative thoughts.
And as a result, did you have any positive ones?
No, not much, not much. And I had done counseling. I'd done EMDR. I had done a couple of intensives that were, 4 days or so. And so I'd really done all the right stuff, and I did my homework with all of that, but I just kept shoving things aside. I thought that if you were really strong, you would just go on with your life and you could ignore all that other stuff.
Right.
But I had an analogy this weekend. I talked about dragging a 10-ton sack behind me and not being aware. I pulled a U-Haul trailer this weekend, and it was pouring down rain, and the trailer was behind me, but I always had to account for it. I couldn't back it up. I knew I couldn't back it up. So if I was going through a gas station, I had to pay attention to where I pulled through. It was like all day long in the rain, that trailer was behind me, and I had to change everything that I did because it was there.
Oh, wow. Sounds
I couldn't
dangerous.
go to certain stores. I had to park in this, but I think that's the same thing when I've got, when you've got that that big sack of stuff that's weighing you down that you haven't ever faced and dealt with, then it's the same as constantly having to look over your shoulder, constantly having to change your plans, constantly having to do things differently because you have to account for it.
Sounds like you're just surviving in a way.
So that's surviving. Yeah. And at the time I started Rebuild, I would come home from work, sit down, and fall asleep.
I mean,
And
this
some
is when
days
you
I would
joined
wake up.
Rebuild.
This is when I joined Rebuild. I'd wake up, get in the bed, and go sleep the rest of the night
Oh my.
because I just was so exhausted. And I think I was exhausted from not being willing to walk through the muck.
Yeah. It sounds like all your energy was being consumed by keeping those emotions down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You had
And I
no
was
one.
afraid. I was afraid if they showed up, I would be totally overwhelmed and not able to function. And
Yeah.
for me, functioning was essential, I
Oh,
thought.
yeah. Yeah. For your job, everything.
Yeah.
So, what made you take that sort of leap in the dark and deal with some of those feelings?
um, well, I saw your Facebook Live with Leslie Vernick about that was preparing for the Conquer conference that was in 2018. And I saw the information on Rebuild, and I just relocated. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have anything, on my agenda. And it just, I don't know, it resonated with me. And then we called and we had the conversation, and I thought, yeah. But the difference was, you said you would walk along beside me and that it didn't have to be fast, that it would take as long as it took. And that it could be incremental, and that getting those emotions back, I mean, becoming the kind of person that could allow emotions to show up would not be overwhelming.
If we did a little bit at a
If we
time.
did a little bit at the time, like you talked about the soda bottle, when you shake it up, you want to just barely open it a little bit at the time.
Yeah.
Because I was really picturing a big event, and I didn't want a big event.
So it was the fact that you knew you wouldn't be going through this alone.
Right, right. And that someone would be helping me get out of the stuck places.
Yeah.
So that even if it took a long time, I would be still making progress along the way.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that I said I will walk with you, but that's key. Because it's really hard and you don't know the journey, and to know somebody's there with you is huge. Mm-hmm. And you did Rebuild Plus, which is not only you joined the group sessions of Rebuild, but you did the individual sessions. So did that help you tailor what you were going through?
Yeah, because I was learning a whole lot from you and from the other people on the Rebuild calls, but I wasn't applying it. I needed help knowing how to put it in my own situation. And my situation wasn't that unique. It's just I couldn't see what steps to take. I couldn't see which pieces applied to me. And then as we went along and there were all of these steps, I was kind of like going, whoa, wait. Yeah. And I needed help to know which piece to do when, and which parts to address and which ones to let go until later.
Yeah, because I remember sort of sharing the big picture of Rebuild, and you said, but I don't know what to do next. That was like, okay, here's what we're going to do next. Do you remember the experience with the box?
I do.
You had this box that of papers you needed to go through, and you kept saying you're going to do it in a day. And I realized, because there were some things related to the divorce in that box, that you couldn't do it all at once, that you didn't realize how much, what emotional connection and triggers were in that box. So how did you tackle the box? Because we talked about it in one of your individual sessions.
Okay, my approach is always you get the work done before you have fun. And then Georgia said, well, what can you do to energize you? Because the box keeps getting set aside for another time. And bike riding really does give me a lot of energy, but you can't go bike riding until you've done your work. And so I told her that morning that I was going to get the box done and then go for a ride. And she said, no, I want you to go for a ride first and then work for 15 minutes on the box and be okay with 15 minutes. Well, that was a big stretch for me. But I ended up doing the bike ride and then doing 15 or 20. And believe me, there was a lot of emotional stuff in that box. I didn't believe it. It was in preparation for tax returns the first year after the first year that, I was filing divorced. And I just I didn't believe her that there was emotions, but she's taught me along the way, deal with the emotional part first, and then you can get the work done. And even when I've told her if I could put the emotions aside, I'd be a lot more efficient. We've had those discussions too, but the box, it got done.
Little by little. And I think that happens with a lot of people. We're going to attack a closet. We're going to do this. And we don't realize first we're depleted by the divorce, emotionally, physically, every which way. So we have very few emotions. And like you said, you didn't understand what triggers were in that box.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when you started going through and dealing with the emotions, and it was a step in the dark. Took courage. I remember the email you sent that you said, now that I'm dealing with the difficult emotions, a whole new realm has opened up. And what did you experience for the first time?
It was joy, but it wasn't too long after that you had sent me the emotions list of emotions so I could start to name them. And I'd done a bike ride through the woods and I was really enjoying it. And I asked myself, what am I feeling right now? And it took me a little bit, but it was exhilaration. And I didn't think I had ever experienced that in a time that I could remember, but that was the word that I landed on.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah. And that was so amazing to me that I could feel that. But it wasn't until I allowed the negative in that I started to feel those positive emotions. Yeah. And get the encouraging, hopeful thoughts showing up.
Yeah. And that success kept building because then you got more energy and then you could deal with a little bit more. So that just kept the momentum going.
Yeah. And I think it was the rebuild process where you had us, take care of the grieving and do it. And that it's not stronger and better and more resilient to ignore that, which is what I really believed. And I don't think that's what I was taught, but it's what I believed, or maybe what I wanted to be true.
Yeah. Yeah. I think at one point you thought it was a sign of weakness to feel those feelings, that you had to be strong in the Lord. And I remember that. Well, now that you've gone through rebuild, comparing your life before rebuild and after, what's the difference?
Oh, I made a list.
Oh, did you? Let's hear it.
But you can interrupt with thoughts because it's really boring when somebody reads the list. But I've got new friends, and they're friends who pray with me and draw me toward Christ. And I remember a discussion that Georgia and I had in a coaching call where I said, they don't know me. I know them, but they don't know me because I don't let them know me.
You wouldn't be vulnerable.
Turn it around so it's about them, and I'm not willing for them to know me. And that's really changed. And then adventures. I have really had some amazing adventures outdoors with friends, and God's given those. And sometimes it's been the amazing timing where I've been at the right time at the right place to see really neat things. And then before I had a strong concern about being excluded, about not belonging. And it even started back in childhood. We talked about that a little bit, but now I feel a really strong sense of belonging in almost all settings. I feel like I belong. And if I don't, I really don't care. It just isn't such a big deal. I'm more talkative. I'm living more in the moment and more just spontaneous with conversation. I was always the silent one. I'm never actually, yeah, go ahead. I know what you're going to say.
Well, I remember the first rebuild you said, call on me with a question because I won't volunteer. And so I did, and you were hesitant, but you would share. But fast forward, not only did you start sharing without being sought out, but we had people in the group. You started having, summarizing the things we were talking about in these little pithy insights. And so one person in the rebuild group started calling them Betty-isms, and she would post them on her wall. So you went from not wanting to share, not thinking you had anything of value, to now everybody's starting to quote you. What did that feel like?
Oh man, it makes me feel like God's using me.
Oh, yeah.
That and I think coming out of my marriage, I just didn't think my words were important, that I had anything valuable to say. And the rebuild group made a big difference in that respect.
Oh, yeah. They hung on your words. You were like E.F. Hutton. They wanted to hear what you had to say.
Me to talk, yeah.
Yeah.
And I wasn't accustomed to that at all.
Yeah. We'll go back to your list. What's next?
Okay. Jesus is very present, not just when I'm at the end of my rope.
Just on daily.
Which daily, yeah, his presence is so much with me. Whereas, before it was like when I got desperate, I would say, oh man, you've got to help me with this. I've done as much as I can. And now it's more walking along with me through the day. And early on in Rebuild, I really thought that it was a long, dark tunnel and Jesus was at the other end of it. And I had to figure out how to get through.
On your own.
Yeah. And that the light was at the end of the tunnel and the light was Jesus, but I had to figure out how to get there. And that was distressing, but you taught us through Rebuild that he's walking with us through it.
He's in that dark tunnel.
Yeah. I think he glows a little bit in the tunnel. I think he's got a little bit of a glow.
Well, yeah, some days I feel that way. And some days while I was rebuilding, it was like, no, this is pretty dark in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And then my life it's wider and broader. It's not the narrow life that I lived right after, the years after and before my divorce. My life had become just very narrow, and I was fearful to step out and try new things, fearful to go new places, fearful to meet new people. I was just really withdrawing into a little cocoon. But now it's wider, it's broader. There's a lot more richness in relationships, and I'm pretty comfortable with a whole variety of people.
Yeah. And your relationships are a lot deeper now. It's not
much
just
deeper,
superficial.
much deeper. Yeah. The 3 or 4 people that are really in my inner circle, those relationships have deepened spiritually too, where I've got friends now where I can just give them a call and we'll pray together over the phone, which I have not had that before.
No.
And I wasn't open enough to receive that.
Well, and it was a real risk because you didn't know how people would respond. I could have just added another layer of hurting, pain, wounded again.
Yeah, and it was risky. It was really scary.
Yeah.
But here
Yeah.
I am. I want to go places. I want to do things. I want to hang out with my coworkers and my friends.
Oh, yeah. And it's such fun to hear all the things you're
And we're doing
doing
a lot of fun stuff, right?
and people you connect with.
Hmm.
Continually forming new friendships. They might not be that inner circle, but you're reaching out. Is there anything else you want to share to somebody where they're thinking, oh, I don't know if rebuild's for me? You know, maybe I've been separated for 3 years and some of these people were divorced. Am I really going to fit in?
Oh, I think I want to say that rebuild is for any of us who are faced with a life change, just an overwhelming life change. And if it's separation or if it's divorce, it's still the same healing process. You know, like I did a lot of my healing after the divorce because I really thought I was going to be able to stay well, and I was focused on that. And then the divorce happened pretty fast. And I realized it wasn't, there were just a lot of healing that I needed to do, but the healing can be done before or after, but
Yeah.
it's still the same process. And to have the support of other ladies who are coming alongside you, who are also having stuck moments and who can brainstorm and help you see what you can't see,
Yeah.
and help reframe and change our mindset is such a benefit.
Yeah. And the only people in that group are women who are separated and divorced. So
Hmm.
they
Hmm.
get what your life's like. And I always, did you feel safe in the rebuild group?
Very safe. I never suspected any breach of confidentiality or any judgment. I think judgment makes us feel unsafe too.
Oh,
But
yeah.
it, I have not experienced anyone telling other people what to do. They've shared what they've done, um, but I felt very safe.
Yeah. And I always love, no matter what the group is in rebuild, the women that come together, the encouragement
Hmm.
that they give each other. I mean, real solid encouragement, lifting people up.
And the prayer time, but also when we come back together and we're just talking at the beginning, somebody's going to ask, how did that work out for you? You know, because you can tell that they've been praying in between, even though there may be 2 weeks in between, there's still that focus on doing the work and holding each other up and supporting one
Yeah.
another, because um, I noticed there was a lot of consistency with people being aware of who needed what to be prayed about
Mm,
and who was in what kind of a difficult situation at that time.
yeah. It's really a priceless experience. Until you're in it, it's hard to share everything, but you did a really
Hmm.
good
Hmm.
job of just the difference, the huge difference in your life.
Oh, it's made a ton of difference for me. I can't picture where I would be right now if I had not signed up for that first rebuild class. And the coaching has been, uh, it's just made, I, I think I would just be the same as I was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Stuck.
that sounds horrible to me now.
Yeah. Because life's so different.
Hmm.
But I'm sure, like a lot of people listening, considering rebuild, I bet you thought your life would never get better after the divorce.
That's right. That's right.
You can
The first
see.
thing I did was just try to continue on with my life like it was, just without my husband there. And that didn't work very well. And then I hit the road, and the problem is everywhere I go, I'm there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything else you would add to somebody who might be considering rebuild?
I think that I would add at the very beginning of rebuild, I felt like I was a step behind everybody else. So many times things were being discussed that I just didn't get it. It was like I almost got it, but not quite. And the discussion would be going on, and I would think they're getting it, but I'm not. But Georgia was so good about answering questions by email. You know, I would email her my questions, and I had a ton of questions because I felt like everything was getting turned upside down, everything that I had believed to be true. And then she would take those questions and address them at the next call, at the next meeting of Rebuild. And that was so helpful to be able to ask questions without getting a "don't you know that" attitude, because there's a lot that I should know that I don't.
Oh, well, yeah. And, rebuild's a skill none of us are ever taught. I mean,
Yeah,
who has
yeah.
learned?
And we never expect to have to do it.
Yeah,
It's, the life I have now is not the life that I pictured for me at this age.
yeah.
It's like we talked about stepping into our changed future
Hmm.
and doing that with confidence and hope. Um, I didn't think that was possible.
And yet here you are.
Yeah,
It's so exciting. It's so exciting to just see how you live your life and you reach out and you really connect with others. And like you said, you have that richness of those close relationships. So thank you, in spite of all the technical difficulties. Thank you for hanging in there. And I hope I don't have any problems sharing this on Facebook.
thank you for giving me a chance to share, because I needed to do this. It was good for me to look back and recap all that Rebuild has done and how my life has changed.
So you've gone from this person who didn't really want to share in the group to now doing
Thank you. Thank you for letting me.
a public
All
thing.
right.
This is so exciting. It really is. Yeah, pure joy. So thank you again. And I just pray anybody who is considering it, that through the Holy Spirit, they would take the risk and do what you did. Take that first step in rebuilding.
I agree.
All right, we'll say goodbye. Take
Goodbye.
care.